So, you ready? You don't need to be ready in the in-class quizzes because I will offer you plenty of time to answer. But if you want, you can already log in to successive, and again, the room name is LUT. And by doing so, you can see what's the first question that I'm about to ask from you. Okay. But again, is there someone checking how is streaming out? How is my YouTube officer? Can you please check how it sounds? Okay, thanks. Good afternoon. So you have a headset with you? Okay, so can we make a mic check just to be sure that the streaming is all right? So this is a mic check, so it's all right. So it seems that this is a mic that works perfectly. And then I have another mic here with me. So whenever there's a comment or question, please use this one. It will help online participants to hear what is your question. Okay, so what I would like to do today is that I would like to wrap up the topic of description of rigid bodies. And as I mentioned to you in my first class, this course is about planar cases, how we describe everything in two-dimensional space. There's an exception, and the exception is today's lecture, because I would like you to learn the basics about rotations in spatial case, three-dimensional case. And why is that? That's simply because in your guided tutorials, you will use commercial software that is either Adams or Mevia. And now those softwares, they operate in spatial cases, in three-dimensional space always. They're using certain kind of description to describe body orientation. So that's why I would like to give you like a news flash. What are the rotations, or what are the body descriptions in three-dimensional space? So that will be what will follow right after my summary of the previous lecture. And then we will move on to a completely new topic. So we will take this equation that you are already familiar with. This one, I'm going to write it down here. The description of, excuse me, so I need to erase something a little bit. Hold on here. Okay, so let's erase everything. So this is the equation we learned already. So we're describing a particle in a global coordinate system. And the particle position is defined by vector r. And that definition consists of two parts. First of all, we will describe the translation of the body reference coordinate system. That we will carry out by using a vector r, capital R. And then we will also account the orientation of body reference coordinate system. And the orientation will be based on the rotation matrix A and vector U bar. So that's what we learned already last week. Now, what follows when we wanted to describe the velocity is that we will take this equation as it is. We will differentiate this once with respect to time, and we will get velocity. Once we differentiate that twice with respect to time, we will get acceleration. And here's pretty much what you need to learn in a multi-body dynamics. You need to know this equation, because we're going to repeat this equation over and over and over again. So we will use this equation to describe the particle. That's the basics. But we will also use that to describe constraints, relations between the bodies. So like if revolute join, we will say, okay, this particular location have to be joined for two bodies. And it all will be based on this equation. So that equation is extremely critical to understand, back and forth. All right. So then I'm going to explain you something that is called generalized coordinates. Extremely important concept. Simple but extremely important concept to understand in a thorough manner. And then we will move on and discuss about constraints. Those are joints that combines bodies together, eliminates motion possibilities. That's what's going to happen today. All right. So, a little bit about some information concerning the the practical stuff. So weekly homework. The deadline for first weekly homework is Sunday at 11:55 p.m. So it's right before the midnight. So that's when the system will automatically close, and that's when the answer will appear automatically. So after that, submissions are no longer accepted. So make sure you're on time. And it really doesn't matter if you're late 1 minute or half an hour or 1 day. You're just late and we don't accept your submissions any longer. All right? So how you can do that? Well, the first assignment, which is a good example, what is about to come, you can solve by using a symbolic math tool or pen and paper, whatever you prefer. Well, what mentioned here is that the symbolic math tools are recommended. And that's because this course is not about mathematics. It's not about mathematics. We're just using the mathematics to solve certain problems. But you don't need to love mathematics, and you don't need to be very good in the matrix operations. And you don't need to be very good, because you can use symbolic math tools. So what are the symbolic math tools you can use? Well, there is a MathCAD, which I'm sure you're already familiar with. There's a Mabel. A MATLAB is capable to do symbolic calculation. So pick the one you like the most, or use a pen and paper. But if you prefer to use a pen and paper, you have to scan your answer and submit that electronically. No other submissions are allowed. And don't email it, because we don't accept the emails. Use the box that is available in the Moodle. Is what? Is showing what? YouTube. Is disappearing, or? It seems to be all right here. Oh, okay, I know what it is. This is a problem. So it should be all right now. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I need to be careful with that. All right. Tutorials. So as discussed last week, the tutorials will get started this week. 3 groups. Pick the one that fits to your schedule best. And then later we will figure out if there's any groups that are with a little attendance, and then we may cancel it. But this week all these 3 groups are available, so just pick the one that fits to your schedule, and that's it. Squeeze in. It's possible that all of you will squeeze in the one tutorials. It's going to be crowded, and then may not be sense to participate in the tutorial like that. So maybe take a look and see how it is. But no prior registration or nothing before these tutorials. Go and try. All right? And John will be there. And by the way, John is a very pleasant guy. He's a good teacher, pleasant guy. So I'm sure you enjoy. All right? Now, what is it we discussed last week? This is a short summary. So my style of teaching is this. So I always get started by summarizing the discussion from previous week. Few slides that kind of tells you how was the business, to refresh your mind. So last week we discussed about multi-body dynamics as a tool, computer-aided tool to solve the system dynamics. And we concluded that multi-body approach can be applied to a wide variety of applications. So it's mentioned here that wide variety of machines, but it's not limited to machines, because biomechanical systems too can be solved using a multi-body dynamics. So wide variety of applications. Here's a few examples. So it can be used to solve the responses of a robotic. It can be solve the responses of mechanisms, different kind, and it can be used to solve the entire systems like an excavator. So all those can be studied by using a multi-body system dynamics. And like I just mentioned just before the streaming, the beauty of multi-body system dynamics is that no thinking is needed. And that's, by the way, is a risk. As soon as you start thinking, these things will go south. So no thinking. You just follow the certain procedure. Once you're following the certain procedure, you will get everything automatically. Now there's a temptation, because you guys are clever, that you start doing thinking. Don't do that in a concept of multi-body system dynamics. Just follow my advices and you will be good. Okay, so We don't make, in the multi-body system dynamics, we don't make any assumption regarding amount of rotations. So we are dealing with large rotations. And that large rotations is the most common source of nonlinear. So we are dealing nonlinear dynamics. And now if you go and take a look at your notes from Dynamics 1 and Dynamics 2 courses, typically you make a linearization, meaning that you're dealing the pendulum, assuming that the pendulum rotation angle is plus minus 10 degrees, or something similar than that. You make an assumption like that, then you can linearize the equation of motion. It's possible to linearize these trigonometric functions, cosine and sine, and then you can find even the analytical solution for your particular problem. We don't do that. We keep the sine and cosine functions in the equation of motion, which means that we can describe large rotation of a pendulum. But the drawback that comes along with this description is that there is no analytical solutions available, generally speaking. So is it better? Any better? Is it that I'm just explaining too long with the one slide? Is not getting better? Okay, let me take a look. This is a software. For me, it looks actually very good when I'm looking at it like this. Okay, so it's better now. So it seems that, so what are you guys saying if I use this technique? Seems that whatever I'm hiding this window, that there's a problem in a streaming. So is it all right if I use overhead projection like this? Is it okay? So it's visible enough. The guys in the back, there's not much room in the front, so you just need to stay in the back. Take the goggles with you, so it could help. Or you use a YouTube. So maybe you can use a YouTube to look at what I'm explaining here. All right. So we're here. Now that's a multi-body system dynamics. And the multi-body consists of multiple bodies. That's what it is. What we're doing here is that we will get started by looking at a single body. And the single body is something that consists of infinite number of uniformly distributed particles. And the particles is something that is a mathematical notation. It's a mathematical notation of a dot, something very, very small. You cannot find that in reality, but we needed that very much because we wanted to describe everything mathematic. Okay, particle, because it's so tiny, so small, it don't have any rotational degrees of freedom. It only have translations. So now it's somewhere located in a certain coordinate system. That's it. No rotations. But now, when we have many particles, like shown in this picture here, so I have particle here and there, I could, in theory, describe each one of these particles by using a vector with respect to global coordinate system. Each one of these vectors must have two components. And when the body moves and rotates, numerical values of those vector components will change. And that actually makes no sense. So we will end up to have an infinite number of variables to describe the system. And computationally, we cannot do that. So we have to use something that is more clever than that. And what we are using in a multi-body system dynamics is that we are using the body reference coordinate system. The body reference coordinate system is attached to body. So body translate, the body reference coordinate system translate along. If it rotates, so do the body reference coordinate system. So that's the concept. And now with help of this concept, description of particle becomes simple and straightforward. Because what we can do is that we can first describe how is a translation of body reference coordinate system with respect to global coordinate system. All right? So that I can describe by vector R, and then I can account the orientation of body reference coordinate system with respect to global coordinate system. How can I do that? I can do that by using a rotation matrix A, 2x2 rotation matrix. And then I can scan every single corner of this body by using a vector U bar. Vector U bar is a constant vector, but it scans within the boundaries of the body. Clear? More or less. All right? So that's what we do. And now here is something about the vector u bar. So like I mentioned, the vector u bar is a constant vector. So it's always describing the one single particle with respect to body reference coordinate system. But as there is an infinite number of particles, the vector u bar is the one that scans within the boundaries of the body. So like in this case, the vector u bar, its length can be with respect to w and h with the dimension of the box. So that's how much it can scan, from 0 to w, from 0 to h. So that's how much it can scan. Here it scans from minus w divided by 2 to w divided by 2. So within these ranges, it scans every single particle within these boxes. In a y direction, it scans from minus 8 divided by 2, 8 divided by 2. So that's the idea. So it's like, well, it's kind of like a variable. Once you describe the one particle, that's it. So that always remains constant. You got the concept. How we will do that? Eventually, because we need to know about inertia properties of the body. What we will do then is that we will integrate within the boundaries of the body. So we will integrate here the vector u bar in such the way that there's going to be integration in x direction, which will be from 0 to w, and it's going to be like this. And here it's going to be 0 to h, and that's how we're going to scan. So that's going to be, the integration, but we're not there yet. But that's the idea, which we will use in a little later. Okay. So, so this is a summary how we describe the particle, and this is what I'm expecting you to memorize. Not much that I'm expecting you to memorize. Don't try to put much effort to memorize how I'm deriving something. I will not ask anything like that. But sure, I will ask concept. I could ask, good question is that, okay, what is a rotation matrix? What's the role of the rotation matrix? What is its job? You know already? You know what it's doing? It's like yes and no. Or don't know. I don't know if I know. So, okay. So what is doing for you? It is mapping from body reference coordinate system to global coordinate system. That's its job. That's what it's doing. Okay? All right? So now this is an equation we will use over and over again, like I already explained to you. So this is an equation, and this is a particular the component that we're interested in. So it's a 2x2 matrix that describes mapping between the body reference coordinate system and the global coordinate system. Now, if you look at how is this matrix, and you're forming the vectors using this column here and this column here, soon you will recognize that this is actually orthogonal matrix. Remember what that means? It means that if you're forming vectors from its columns, those vectors are perpendicular with respect to each other. Perpendicular meaning in two-dimensional space that they have a 90 degrees of angle. Okay, so what's 90 degrees of angle? That's the body reference coordinate system. And now if you take a close look about components, these components, you will recognize that this first vector is a body x coordinate axis. Second one is a body y coordinate axis. So that's what it is. So that's a little bit of physical interpretation about rotation matrix. All right. Example. So let's look at the example, similar to the one I'm expecting you to solve before Sunday night. So I have here a body that is a beam-like body. So in this picture here is a little small for you guys here, but those ones that are following the YouTube, it should be clear. Okay, so I'm asking where the particle P that is located at one end of the beam-like body, where that is located with respect to with respect to global coordinate system. In the global coordinate system, that's this one here. All right? Everything is provided to me. So it's, it's mentioned here that the beam-like body have a length of 2 meters, 2 units. The body reference coordinate system that is located in the middle of the beam-like body, that already translated the units, 1 unit in X direction, 1 unit in a Y direction, global directions. And then the angle is provided here, so the body reference coordinate system is rotated amount of 3 multiplied by P divided by 4. All right? So I need this equation, and I simply substitute in everything here. So I put this one here. I will put angle to this 2 by 2 rotation matrix, and my only a little bit cumbersome component is a vector U-bar. A vector U-bar, if you look at the body reference coordinate system, x-axis is pointing this direction, y-axis is pointing this direction. Now you have to understand that in order to define the vector U-bar, you have to move yourself the body reference coordinate system. Now you're in the body reference coordinate system, you want to travel here to here. How you can make it happen? So you have to move along the y direction, but how much? Okay, so you're playing with me today, or so how much you're gonna move to minus direction? 1. You're gonna move minus 1. How much you have to move this direction? 0. So that's 0. So that's all you need. So next, what follows is pure math. And that's where those symbolic math tools, they come to play. So you do the substitution and you will get the solution like this. Simple. Look at this. So this is almost like these people that are in a preschool, they're laughing at us if they see what we're doing here, because this is so simple stuff. Unbelievable, isn't it? Still, this leads you to equation of motion with no thinking. A little bit of thinking in order to understand the concept, but that's all that is needed. All right, so the role of the rotation matrix, that's clear. Okay. So my first question is this. What is the role of the rotation matrix? So now I'm expecting the success rate that is 110%. 100%. All right? So the choices are: describe the rotation of particle, rotation of the particle. All right? It maps the body reference coordinate system and the global coordinate system. That's the second option. Third option, maps the body translation and rotation. Describe the translation of body A. 4 choices. Out of the 4 choices, 1 only is correct. Clear. So if you're feeling just a little bit shy of this, go and ask from your fellow student, because I'm seriously expecting 100% success rate. Okay? Clear? You know for a fact what this is. Clear? Okay, should we take a look what is the results? What if it's going to be 100%? Are we going to celebrate? Are we going to organize a party of some kind? Maybe. Too early. Too early. We need to see how is the scoring. Here. So it is a moment of truth. Someone still seems that we have 61 students this time. Some of you are still entering the answer. You guys all done? Okay, what about the online? It seems that maybe some of the online participants are still thinking. Okay, what do you say? Is it going to be 100%? No. 99%. Okay, almost there. So within 5 seconds I will move on. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Look at that, 90%. 90%. Amazingly good, amazingly good. But something that I'm a little worried about. And the option number 1 makes no sense. Remember, particle, how is the rotation of the particle? Non-existent. There's no non-existent. That makes no sense. Others, really, I mean, other than the correct one, not that much sense, but the first one is absolutely incorrect. So incorrect that I should actually give a little bit of penalizing if you're entering that answer. But I don't. All right? So we go back here. So now what follows is that we're going to move on to three-dimensional space. And this is almost repeating what I already explained to you. There's some differences, and the differences are mainly related to rotation matrix. Other than that, everything is just adding one dimension, so it's extremely straightforward. All right, so without any further ado, so let me show you how is a description of particle in three-dimensional space. So it's based on this equation. What we have here is a translation, the component that describes translation. That consists of three components. Why? Because in a three-dimensional space we have axes that are x, y, and z. So you have to define the translation with respect to those three axes. So that's where the three components are coming from. Then I have here 3x3 rotation matrix, which can be defined mathematically number of different ways. It's quite surprising that mathematical description of body in three-dimensional space is still partly open science questions. It's quite surprising because we know for a fact that the body can rotate three different ways. Correct. But how to describe that mathematically, that's a challenge. That's a challenge. Every single way that are available at the moment comes with a certain advantages and disadvantages. And then there's a debate which is the best way. What we're going to learn today will be a method based on three parameters, three angles. That's kind of like a little bit of old-fashioned way to describe rotations. The most advanced ones are those ones that are based on four parameters that are called quaternions. And now if you go to Amazon.com and you type rotations and quaternions, you will find hundreds and hundreds, well, not hundreds and hundreds of books, but quite a good number of books about rotations and quaternions. So you can really educate yourself about this topic. We will just spend here 20 minutes and then it's done. So we're going to use three parameters, not four parameters, but four parameters always comes with the one constraint because, again, body can rotate in three different ways only. So it's not possible that the body can have four independent ways to rotate. Only three. Okay, we're going to look today how is that we can describe this rotation matrix by using Euler angles. And Euler angles, it is something that is very frequently used. And is based on three successive rotations. Usually I don't do translation, but this time I need to ask from Finnish students, because again, due to my limitation in languages, the only two languages, is it clear for Finnish students what is a successive, what that means? It's a peräkkäiset. Three successive rotations. That's what we're looking here. And that's the key to describe the rotations in three-dimensional space using this method, using the Euler angles. Now, Euler angles can be used in many different sequences. Order of rotation could be, all the ones that are mentioned here. The most common one is a sequence where the first rotation takes place around z-axis. Second rotation, which rotates once rotated coordinate axis, will take place around x-axis. And the third rotation will take place around twice rotated z-axis. So it's z, x, z. That's the most common way to describe successive rotations. Others exist, but the most common one is this one. Sometimes the student asks, like, why this? Because why something else? I'm not sure if I have a clear answer, but if you look at the gyroscope that is shown here, not really the latest model, but example about the gyro. Now, if you look at how are the rotations in gyro, so you will not recognize that the first rotation will take place around z-axis. Correct. Second one around x-axis. Third one around z-axis. So it's z, x, z. So that's the most common sequence. And as you know, you can take the gyro and you can put it at any orientation in space. So it's possible. That, by the way, and why is that I'm explaining this sequence to you? That's simply because Adam's software is using Euler angles based on this particular sequence, z, x, z. So it goes, the idea of this rotation, like shown here, you have initially two coordinate systems that are parallel. Then you will introduce amount of rotation that is psi. What is this? Psi. Phi. What? Phi. 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 Should we vote? No? Okay. So it's phi? Okay. So we're going to introduce the rotation that is this amount. Okay. So we create this. Then we have coordinate system that is rotated. Then we're going to take a hold of once rotated x-axis. We're going to introduce another rotation that is amount of, and I do know this, theta. Theta. Right. Theta, yeah, it is theta. Yeah. And then I have coordinate system that is twice rotated. And then I will take a hold again about z-axis. And this time I'm introducing psi. Psi. Okay, so psi. And then I have three successive rotations. Clear? All right. Okay, so how this will happen mathematically. So I'm not going to explain all the details, but again, get to you to know that successive rotations mathematically can be described by multiplying matrices together. So if you have two successive rotations, you describe each one of these two rotations by one matrix, and then you multiply the matrices and you will get two successive rotations. This is a concept we're going to follow to get the 3x3 rotation matrix based on Euler angles. All right? So the first rotation around z-axis, which is amount of unknown parameter here, which we cannot pronounce, but that doesn't really matter. So we have this one here. Now if you take a close look, you will recognize that we have something we're very much familiar with. So we have this 2x2 rotation matrix hidden to this 3x3 rotation matrix, and the column here shows where the rotation takes place. Z-axis. All right? Then now we're going to go and take another rotation. We're going to do the rotation around x-axis, shown here. And then we have again this 2x2 rotation matrix. Final rotation takes place around z-axis. And we have this 2x2 rotation matrix. Now just a little bit of math, and we have a definition of 3x3 rotation matrix. A little bit of math is that we will take each one of these matrices and multiply them together. Then we have relation between original global coordinate system and 3 times rotated body reference coordinate system. All right? So that's how it goes. Here's, by the way, a good example of what I will not ask in written exam. I'm not expecting you to provide me 3x3 rotation matrix based on Euler angles. That will not happen. But I might ask, what's the concept behind? Like, how that is based on. Then you need to know about story, about successive rotations, you know, what are the angles, I mean, what are the axes that I'm using, and so on and so forth. All right? So here I have here first rotation, second rotation, and third rotation. And then when I do the math, this is how the 3x3 rotation matrix look like. Whatever you're using 3 parameters to describe rotations, you will have a problem that is called singularity. Singularity, you know, here there's a, if you take a look at the lecture note, there's something mentioned about Kimball locking. When you're using Euler angles, you can have the Kimball locking. It's not mechanical lock. It's not something that the system locks, but it's a problem in the mathematical definition. And the problem in the mathematical definition can take a place, if the first rotation is something that it's 0 or 360 degrees. Then you cannot no longer differentiate which is related to first rotation and which is related to third rotation. If you Google that if you search in YouTube using Kimball Lock, you can find some interesting stories about accident and stuff because of the Kimball Lock. So that's because of the mathematical singularity, which is a serious business. It can lead to different kind of consequences. What kind of consequences? Take a look at from the YouTube. Then inhaler angles, an often used sequence, the one we just studied. What's the sequence? And these are the choices. So it's X, Y, Z, Z, Y, X, Z, Y, Z, Z, X, Z. So it's not yet online. No. Let me put it online. Okay, next. So here it is. Clear? All right, we'll get back to that soon. You need some time to think. Would you like to go and take a look at the previous slides? Sure? Whatever you want. I'm with you. I'm here to help. Go and consult with your fellow student. Think about the gyro. Okay, so I will leave you to think about this a little bit. Or should we just wait? Let me take a look how is here. It seems that we still need to wait a little while. So let's wait a little while. So last time there were a total of 62 answers, wasn't it so? What's going to be success rate this time? Low, high, medium, 18, 8, 80. Could be 80. Okay, now we have 66 students. Oh, we have more this time. Okay. We all done? You all done? Online participants, I hope you all done. Because what I will do here is that I will press how we do within the 5 seconds. So it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And do we have, okay, so that's the deadline. 90, you said 90, any other cases? 80, yeah, 80, any other cases? 70, 75. Oh, hold on. So if you guess 75, I will offer you coffee. Oh, close. It was close. But not exactly that number, but it was close. All right? Okay, so that's about rotations in three-dimensional space. What are the properties of rotation matrix? I already explained to you that rotation matrix are describing the axis of body reference coordinate system. In 2- and 3-dimensional space, that's a clear case. Is a definition of orthogonality. And if you look at the length of those vectors, they will be unit in length. So that's something that really is beautiful. Now, because of the orthogonality, the matrix transpose will be equal than the inverse of the matrix. What that means, what it means for us. Now, if the matrix A maps from body reference coordinate system to global coordinate system, what is that the transpose is doing for us? It's doing that other way around, meaning that it maps from global coordinate system to body reference coordinate system. That's what it is. Okay, so because of the orthogonality, so we can have a matrix transpose multiplied by original matrix, and we will get identity matrix. All right, three-dimensional space, the order of rotation is important, and you cannot change the order of rotation. So you can make an experiment if you want. So you can have a matchbox, and you can move that first around y-axis and then around z-axis, and then you do that other way around. You will recognize that the matchbox will have a different final configuration. So the order of rotation, you cannot change that in three-dimensional space. Two-dimensional space is immaterial because we are rotating the body using the one axis only. So that's why. It's a special case. So that's shortly about the mathematical properties. You know, these will come along when we look at the properties, when we actually define the velocity and acceleration and others. Something dropped from my head or someplace else? Not from my head. The ball. Okay. All right. So we're going to move on to velocity and acceleration, and then extremely important concept, which is generalized coordinates, because everything will be then based on generalized coordinates. We will define the equation of motion using generalized coordinates, meaning that all the forces have to be one more week without explaining anything about forces. We will just look at the kinematics, and we will learn how to conduct the kinematic analysis, which is a motion analysis. Nothing to do with the forces. It's just how is a motion, how we describe the motion in position, velocity, and an acceleration level. Okay? But to make that happen, let's look at the velocity and acceleration. And that's very mathematical, meaning boring. So this is very boring sentence. So if you want to have a break, take a nap, this is the time to do so. Take a nap, and then later check like how is the final result. Because what I'm going to do is that I will just, what I mentioned, I will take a definition of particle, and I will differentiate that with respect to time, and I will get velocity. That's it. But what comes along is a little bit of mathematical manipulation. Don't get confused about mathematical details. Think about the big picture again. All the time, big picture. Why we do this? Again, we have this definition of particle, and we have a lot of particles that the particles forms the body. Now we're looking how is velocity of particles, and then later we will look at the acceleration. Why? Because eventually we will use this equation that maybe you have already familiar with. So we will use the equation which is acceleration multiplied by mass. Okay, so equal then externally applied forces. F equal mass multiplied by acceleration. Have you ever had this equation before? You have. We will use this. So how it goes, so now we have this one here. We're going to move on and describe velocity. And here acceleration goes here. You always have an equation of almost. Few steps and then we're there. But keep this big picture in your mind. That's why we need velocity to be able to step to accelerations. And accelerations we have to have. Okay, clear? Okay, so what happens? So we take this position, we differentiate that with respect to time. All right, so what's going to happen then? My position description is this one here. So I will substitute that to this equation, and then I have this partial operation with respect to time. So I have here partial r divided by partial t. So partial operation with respect to time. Now my first component is this one here. So I'm differentiated the translation with respect to time. What will come is a translational velocity. Translational velocity I will define as a r dot. That's what counts. Because this is a vector that is not the constant but is a function of time. That's what will happen. Then I have here this component that consists of two parts. So I have rotation matrix and vector u-bar. That I will then differentiate with respect to time. And from the math that it goes is that's the way that I first differentiate rotation matrix with respect to time. Vector u-bar is here. And then I have a rotation matrix and vector u-bar is differentiated with respect to time. But remember, vector u-bar is, now say it together, constant. It's a constant vector. Because it's a constant vector, what's this? Equal to 0, so it vanishes, disappears. Okay, what's left? Two components. And now I simply do this. So I'm defining this one here, which is a partial operation of rotation matrix. I will define that as a dot. That needs a little bit of further explanation, and we go there in the next slide. Okay, so a dot. What's that? Well, that's a rotation matrix differentiated with respect to time. And now we need to take a look at how are the components in my 2x2 rotation matrix. So I have here first cosine theta, minus sine theta, cosine theta. And now I will differentiate each one of these four components with respect to time. And now comes a little bit of inconvenient mathematics. You have to go back to your notes and look like, okay, what is the chain rule of differentiation? And using the chain rule of differentiation, you can actually carry out this operation. And I will jump to final conclusion. So it's going to be, that you have to differentiate the cosine to get and you will get the minus sine theta, and then you will differentiate the angle. An angle, I'm going to define that as a theta dot. Then I will do that for next component. This minus sine will be cosine theta, and then again this theta dot. And the similar way I will go over these four components. This is how is my final solution. And now I can take this theta dot and I can take it off from the matrix and put it just before the matrix. So final result look like this. So I have here my a dot, which is expressed like it is shown here. Now I have here theta dot, which is called angular velocity. Angular velocity is multiplied by something that I'm denoting here as a rotation matrix differentiated with respect to angle theta. That's the notation that I'm using. I don't know how you like about this. Not much to like. It's math. Okay. Now if you look at this, compare this matrix with respect to original matrix. This matrix is actually rotated 90 degrees positive direction with respect to original matrix. It's called skew, relation is that. So that's if your original bireference coordinate system is like this. Now this one is rotated like this. That's what it is. There is a further explanations about this in a lecture note. Okay, now we have velocity. The final summary is this. So velocity consists of two components. Translational velocity, which shows how is the velocity of body reference coordinate system with respect to global coordinate system. And then the angular velocity, that is the latter component. This this component here. Do you still have this can-do attitude? Because of course you understand what will happen next. So this was the beginning. So we have one step to take, and that's acceleration. Acceleration is so heavy stuff that you have to have a break before that. You have to go and walk a little bit, stretch, relax, and come back. Have the can-do attitude, and it's going to work out beautifully. And then something fun. Then we're going to take a look at these generalized coordinates and constraints. But that's the first part. I don't know if I should close the streaming or should I keep it on? Which one is more convenient? Close it. Okay. So then that's what I'm going to do. So those ones that are following the online presentation, we will have a 10 minutes break. 10 minutes. So 5:15 we will be back. Okay.